Good morning, it's Josh from Cyclone, and today we are tracking this developing tropical cyclone in the Coral Sea once again. It's looking substantially healthier than what we were looking at yesterday, and it looks like it is actually on the cusp of becoming a tropical cyclone as it heads towards Vanuatu and New Caledonia. Now, it is no threat to the Australian continent. I've seen a couple of comments about how there are people panicking in northern Queensland about this, which, I mean, it's understandable for a developing tropical cyclone in the Coral Sea that it's got people on edge, but it is, and I reiterate, no threat to the Queensland coastline. In this video, we're going to take a look at this system, plus some other systems in the South Pacific Basin which are impacting the climate around this storm. And then we're also going to take a look at a system expected to develop in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And spoiler alert, this one gets quite strong, but it does have a rather uncertain future. So tracking what is Invest 94P or Tropical Low 06U right now as it heads towards Vanuatu, you can see it's got some very nice convective banding features at this time. It's got what looks to be an inflow feature towards the eastern side, and it looks like it's also got a very defined low-level center at this time. We'll take a look at wind observations, see what's going on around the center of the storm. It looks like there are actually some pretty strong winds around the northern side, up to 46 kilometers an hour, and then across New Caledonia 40 to 50 kilometers an hour as well. And keep in mind, these observations are taken a long way away from the storm's center, which means that this storm probably has cyclone winds right now. We'll just briefly take a look at model initialization, and it looks like the forecast models, the ECMWF in particular, might have actually underestimated maximum wind speeds for this system. They've estimated 50 to 55 kilometer an hour peak wind speeds right now, but I reckon this actually might be a little bit stronger, and based solely off satellite presentation. If we're to take a look at infrared satellite imagery in particular, which gives an idea of how strong the thunderstorms are, it's looking really healthy, and I would not be surprised if this gets classified as a tropical cyclone today into the hours of this afternoon. It's looking really quite decent, that's for sure. And it's also got a very nice lower level center, which is what I've been talking about over the last couple of days. It really needs this lower level center to wrap itself up, and it looks like it has that it's done that quite nicely. So I'm actually quite impressed with this tropical low right now. It's looking stronger than what it initially was forecast to be. Now let's take a look at rainfall for New Caledonia right now. We're taking a look at the current rain radar. I know there was quite a lot of convection and cloud activity across New Caledonia, but it looks like the rainfall isn't right over New Caledonia at this time. You can see a bit of lightning activity around the storm center. That means that the thunderstorm activity is very strong around where this storm is right now, which is hardly surprising because it does look really quite decent. And that's why it's probably quite close to becoming a tropical cyclone at this time. But anyways, enough yap about the current conditions. We're going to take a look at the forecast of this system. We're looking at the ECMWF forecast model first. There's been a bit of a change from yesterday, but I won't get into detail about that until I've shown you what's actually changing. You can see it gets upgraded to a tropical cyclone as per the forecast models come around Thursday evening into Friday morning. This is a forecast model, of course, so there will be levels of inaccuracy to this, but the ECMWF has been fairly reliable, and this does look in line with what the storm looks like right now. So I'm very inclined to believe the eastern will be a forecast in this, and I don't see any reason why it can't be trusted right now. Coming around Friday and into Saturday, it will be fully intensifying at that point before Saturday. I guess Saturday afternoon is when it really starts to weaken off as it moves just south of Port Vila. It'll probably peak at around Saturday morning, still as a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone. It'll be very weak before it moves towards Fiji. And then it'll be moving south of Fiji again. It could still have some pretty strong wind gusts at this point, but it looks like it gets ripped apart by wind shear and really isn't a storm at all beyond next, say, Tuesday. And it really just gets absorbed up into this really broad low-pressure system by the looks of things come around later next week. But you can see other strong systems are expected to be around in the South Pacific. It really looks like there's quite a lot of activity expected over the coming couple of days in other regions of the South Pacific around Tuvalu and Tonga. We're expecting some strong systems through there. We will be watching these because the stronger these storms get, the stronger their pull is going to be on this system, Tropical Low 06U, and that means either the faster it'll be moving or the closer it will eventually get to Fiji. But because these systems are so weak, it's probably not going to have a drastic impact on this system, and I don't think that that's going to be a factor in this forecast that's worth considering. If we were to switch it up and take a look at the GFS forecast model just to get another perspective, I think the GFS still calls for a slightly stronger system. It was yesterday at least, but yeah, very similar track forecast and a very similar time forecast as well until about Saturday, when it looks like it moves just a little bit further south before weakening significantly as it clips southern Vanuatu come Sunday, and then it stalls throughout Sunday and into Monday before once again in line with the ECMWF forecast. It looks like it doubles back and heads towards the Coral Sea and then Queensland. But again, really absolutely nothing at this point. It just gets absorbed into this really big tropical low that's going to be fighting with this strengthening system over here around Tonga or Tuvalu. Yeah, so it's a very difficult forecast beyond about Sunday, but right now I can say with high confidence that Vanuatu, the southern regions of it, will likely receive a Category 1 tropical cyclone impact, and that could also bring some damaging winds and heavy rainfall. New Caledonia as well could be receiving some pretty strong wind gusts from the passage of this tropical cyclone as well. That's always something with the close passage of these tropical systems. Just briefly taking a look at the Axis G3, we'll take a look at wind accumulation, because yesterday they were calling for peak wind gusts approaching 150 kilometres an hour. They're now back in line with every other forecast model, 100 kilometres an hour peak wind gusts, which I mean for this part of the world, which is used to tropical cyclones throughout the monsoon season, that's really nothing much to worry about. So again, damaging winds still possible, but it's the rainfall threat as well that should also be mentioned, because there will be quite a significant amount of rainfall falling across parts of Vanuatu as well. There'll be one or two locations, especially where the storm's core makes passage, that will be seeing rainfall accumulations probably approach 150 to 200 millimetres. But considering the nature of this storm, where it's got some really strong thunderstorms on approach to Vanuatu, that could fall in very torrential rain showers and thunder showers on approach to the tropical cyclone's core. But then on the back end of the storm as well, and beyond about Saturday evening or Sunday, the rainfall threat should really ease off. In short, we're not expecting a flash flooding or riverine flooding emergency to devolve out of this. What is interesting though is the amount of rainfall expected for Queensland. We're now going to take a look at what's happening across the monsoon in the northern parts of Australia from about day 5 to about day 10, and you can see quite a lot of rainfall expected through here. We're definitely moving into another monsoon burst by the looks of things, and some pretty heavy rainfall totals across parts of the Gulf of Carpentaria and the Northern Territory as well. In short, we're expecting a pretty strong monsoon burst to occur, and that's in line with most major forecast models as well. It looks like the wet will be well and truly back come around mid-February. Now, let's take a look at wind forecasts. We've pulled it back to Thursday, and now we're taking a look at the Access G3 model. I know it's not the most reliable of forecast models, but we're looking at this one because it is the one that has initialized the monsoon, and it's also calling for the formation of the systems. Once again, this is a forecast. It's nothing to get worried about right now. It's not even something that the Bureau of Meteorology is tracking or worried about at this time, but something that we certainly do need to be watching. So I'm going to skip it through to about Saturday and into Sunday, when you can start to see these westerly winds enhance a little bit further over the Arufa Sea north of the Northern Territory, and it looks like a low pressure system tightens itself up come around early next week into Tuesday and Wednesday, and it looks like it becomes a cyclone as it moves over Groote Island, quite a strong system by the looks of this, and then it rapidly intensifies in the Gulf of Carpentaria later next week through Thursday and Friday, before making a landfall on Mornington Island, or very close past to Mornington Island, about Friday evening as what looks like a very powerful Category 4 strength severe tropical cyclone, before looking like it makes a very similar landfall in a location, not a similar landfall, but a landfall in a location very similar to where Tropical Cyclone Kirrily made her second landfall, as on the Queensland Northern Territory border. And this has been a scenario that the Access G3 has been forecasting for the past couple of days now. So it's something that we do need to be watching, because there's now model consistency with it. The Access G3 has been behind it for the last couple of days, but I don't think there's any other forecast models really backing this system. They're just backing this strong tropical low in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and the GFS is actually not backing anything at all. But once again, certainly this chance that we see a system develop here in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and also a very high chance that it becomes a strong tropical cyclone if it can really get itself going. Conditions are primed for some really significant intensification phases in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and it's something that we really need to be watching in this part of the Australian region, because there are strong tropical cyclones can happen this time of the year. I mean, we've seen it before with some of the most powerful tropical cyclones in Australian history moving through the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, I would also like to mention that the one place that's been really neglected this season for everything basically apart from heat, we've had a very hot start to summer in Western Australia, but there's been absolutely no tropical cyclone activity to speak of. And if we look at wind accumulation over the next 10 days, which shows the peak maximum wind gust over the next 10 days, you can see there's just nothing in terms of tropical cyclone activity in the West Australian region. And it's slightly concerning, because the warmer that these sea surface temperatures get, and the more fuel that builds up for tropical cyclone formation and intensification through parts of Western Australia that we see over the next couple of months. I mean, there's bound to be a system here eventually, and it's going to have basically a season's worth of energy to tap into, and we could be seeing an unprecedented storm intensity-wise. And I'm daring to put that into my long-range forecast, where we're very likely to see a Category 5 strength severe tropical cyclone move through at least some part of the West Australian region, come around late February into March and April. It's a very high chance. It happens quite often, a couple of times a decade at least. We had it last year with Cyclone Ilsa, and we've had it years before with Veronica and some other really significant names. What was the one? Marcus is one of the strongest storms in the Australian region officially as well. And it's about time that we get a strong tropical cyclone up in northern Western Australia and that sort of region. It doesn't necessarily have to impact land, but these long tracking systems that get spat off the Northern Territory and track through here, we haven't had any of them yet, not even a tropical low. It has been very, very barren up in Western Australia, and like I said, it does happen every now and then, and it's expected for an El Nino year that we are quieter than usual, but I just did not foresee it being this quiet at all. And even rainfall totals anywhere south of around Fitzroy Crossing and Broome, it's been really quite dry. We've only had 1 or 2 days with significant rainfall across a lot of Western Australia, and then just the rest of the days mean it's barely struggling to blow up pulse thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening. So I'm slightly concerned for tropical cyclone activity up here, that's for sure. But yeah, anyway, starting to waffle on here about stuff that doesn't really matter to our forecast, and the tropical low developing in the Coral Sea, and also the system developing up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. But if you do want to see more content like this, then please do consider subscribing. It really does help us out, and we're nearing closer on 11,000 subscribers, so your support really is appreciated. And if you want to monetarily support the channel as well, then please do click the join button down below. It really does help out as well. And anyways, that is all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.